Hello, grade 12s. Welcome back to our English first additional language preparation for literature that we speak, which is paper 2 is still on poetry. And we are going to now do another sonnet by the renowned author and writer, classical writer, by the way, William Shakespeare. It's a very old classical poem. And this is now what you call an Elizabethan or Shakespearean sonnet, that which we are going to read about it and its structure. Whenever you speak about this structure, do remember what I said, that you must be in a position to differentiate it between the Italian, if not the Peterkin sonnet. The Italian or Peterkin sonnet, we have already done that which is on the grasshopper and cricket. So you must be in a position to differentiate between the two. And by now, I have stated that you should expect questions around structure of the poem, even though it's not a sonnet. It might be a free verse, it might be a ballad, and so forth. William Shakespeare was born, just a brief background, because we always do that with with poets, so that we get to understand them a bit better, which ultimately makes their work easier for us to understand. He was born on the 26th of April, 1564. That was a long time ago, and died on the 23rd of April, 1616. An English playwright, poet, even he did a bit of acting. So he wrote 154 sonnets, and from the 154 sonnets that he wrote, today we are going to learn about sonnet 73, that which is famous. Sonnet 73 is seen as one of his famous sonnets related to old aging. So this sonnet is going to be, if not the nub of the sonnet itself, is going to be centered around the ideas of aging as well as death. So Sonnet 73, the ideas there is going to be related to aging and death. So these are the two concepts that we expect to read about in this sonnet. Now the sonnet reads as follows. That time of year thou mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves or none or few do hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs where late the sweet bird sung. In me thou seest the twilight of such a day, as after a sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away. Death's second self, that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as a deathbed wherein it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceived, which makes thy love more strong, the love that well which thou must live for long, or forever long. And then we are going to have a translation into the modern day English, which means you may see that time of the year in me, when few or none yellow leaves hang on those branches that shiver in the cold bare rooms of the choir stalls where sweet birds sang so recently. You see in me the twilight of a day, after the sun has set in the west, extinguished by the black night that imitates death, which closes everything in rest. You see in me the glowing embers that are all that is left of the fire of my youth, the deathbed on which youth must inevitably die, consumed by the life that once fed it. This is something you can see, and it gives your love the strength deeply to love that which you have to lose soon. So we did mention that the poem speaks about the two concepts, that which is aging and death. So the title, we don't need to unpack it further. We just know that it is number 73 from the 144 poems that he wrote. Now let us look into the format, that which is the structure. I've stated and emphasized over and over again that the structure is important. So, and then whenever you answering questions based on poetry, you should expect questions around structures. And please don't only be fixated that you'll only get structure questions based only on sonnets. You may get structure questions for free verses, for ballads, and so forth. So each and every poem that you analyze in grade 12 or that you have analyzed in grade 12, please revise all the structure so that you know and you are in a position to answer successfully the structure of that particular poem. Now, this is a poem of 14 lines, of course, is an English Shakespearean or Elizabethan sonnet. So these are just synonyms. If you don't want to call it Shakespearean sonnet, you can call it Elizabethan sonnet. And then it consists of 3 quatrains. What do you mean by quatrains? A quatrain, it means 4 lines. So it means the set of 4 lines. It means the first 4 lines will rhyme together. The second 4 lines will rhyme together. The third 4 lines will rhyme together, giving us the total of 12 lines. And then the last 2 lines, we call them a couplet. And then we've got iambic pentameter, and then the rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B, C, G, C, D, E, F, E, F, and then of course the couplet is going to be what? G, G. The first 2 quatrains introduces the main idea and the theme of the poem. Bear in mind, don't forget that you are dealing with aging and the concept of death. And at the beginning of the 3rd quatrain, there is a change in poem where there is almost a twist, and then the couplet summarizes and leaves the reader with a new concluding image. So we are going to see those images, we are going to see those mood and those themes. And bear in mind also what I've told you, that you must be able to note if there's a transition in a poem where now the poet moves from one tone to the other and moves from one theme to the other to embrace something totally different than what was embraced initially in the poem. So please be mindful of transitions, if not contrast, in poems. Critical to know the difference, vocabulary, line by line. That time of the year thou must behold. Right? Let me just unpack the notes quickly. Right. In the first quatrain, the poet anticipates his own decay, means his own demise, his own death. He talks of the time when he will appear as pale and dry as the world in cold, biting winter. He compares himself as the branches of the tree that used to be lovely and melodious. That time of the year mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves or none or few do hang. When we see yellow leaves during the season of autumn, that is when plants, if not flowers, shed off their leaves in preparation for spring, so that after winter, so that they can grow again. So he compares to himself not to a blooming flower or a green flower, but a yellow. Yellow meaning that it is now decaying. It means that it's now old, right? And then in that particular tree, he says a few or none do hang. And of course, during autumn, that is when the trees are shedding their leaves, and then that is why you see none or few. He's still referring to the leaves. And this imagery, it is used to show or to emphasize or to indicate the idea, if not the concept of what of aging. Upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs where the late sweet birds sing. Now, because of the cold weather that shook the boughs, it means the branches of the tree, that shook the branches of the tree. What we mean by bare, something that is bare is something that is naked, right? Ruined choirs, here represents the sounds of the birds, of the chirping birds, where late the sweet birds sang. It means, and you can also see the tense that is used in this line is past tense. It means that currently the birds are not there to sing, because why? The wind and the coldness shook off the branches now, and already even the branches don't have a leaf because the leaves are yellow and there's nothing hanging there, or only few leaves are left. And even the bare, it means naked or in the absence of something. Ruined something. When you ruin something, it's when you destroy it. So again, I'm going to take you back to what we said when we were discussing poetry, that you check diction and how images are portrayed, if not painted in a picture, to drive a particular idea home. So the idea that is being driven by William Shakespeare here to us is that even the trees, even the birds that used to sit or nest in the trees to sing are no longer there because the trees are bare, and then they late. Even look at the word late and then sung. You look at the word late and then you look at the word sung, past tense. It means that currently, as in when the speaker is speaking, there are no birds that are singing. Even the trees are how naked. This is also to show what he compares himself as a branch of the tree that used to be lovely and melodious, but currently it is no longer melodious, and which ultimately correlates with the idea of what aging. And then you here refers to the friend. Yellow leaves refers to autumn of life. Gray hair. Line 3, boughs. It means what? The branches, like I've already stated. These branches are empty now, meaning that old age or growing older. There used to be birds sitting there. Branches are now bare because remember the leaves no longer do what? Hang. So he uses those images. So this poem is filled with extended metaphors. He uses a season of autumn and the tree branches that are shaking off the leaves and that are now bare to compare himself to what? To aging, to signify or represent the idea of what? Of aging. Old age and autumn is a metaphor. I've said that you must draw a you must draw a common thread between autumn and old age. Old age, it means that one is aging, getting older, and then autumn, that's when the trees also getting older because the trees it's in a season where trees are shedding off their leaves in preparation for new ones. Line 5 to 8. And then quickly, before we get to line 5, 7, and 8, let me just summarize quickly the first quatrain to say that in the first quatrain, the speaker compares aging to late autumn, which is by using a metaphor. And then growing older is like when the leaves have fallen off the trees. That is the comparison, or the effectiveness of using that metaphor is to show that by virtue of growing older, it's more like a leaf that sheds off its tree during during an autumn season. And furthermore, it's an extended metaphor because the weather has gotten colder and the birds have just flown away. And then even the melodious sound from the birds are no more because it said that bare rund choirs. So it shows that and signifies the first quatrain, the idea of aging. Now let us check the second quatrain. In me thou seest the twilight of such a day, as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away death, second self, seals up all in rest. The poet implies here the approach of death to him, almost becoming depressed, and then the mood changes to gloom and melancholy. Remember, it's important to always identify the mood and the themes that are portrayed through the words that are used, the manner in which the poet chose to use words to describe circumstances. Now, in me thou seest the twilight of such a day. When you say twilight, that is the reddish appearance of the sun just before it sets. So when the sun sets, of course, what comes after the sun sets is nothing but darkness. So twilight here is going to represent the end of life of the speaker, because twilight, it means when the sun sets, now moving from day to night. So that movement or that shift signifies, of course, not only aging, but now he introduces further the idea of dying. As after sunset fadeth in the west, exactly what I've just explained. The poet implies here the approach of death to him, almost becoming depressed. The mood changes to gloomy and melancholy. And then you also see which by and by black night doth take away. Repetition of the word by, and also description of the night that is black doth take away death, second self, that seals up all in rest. He says here that he will look like the quickly fading twilight of the day as the sun is setting in the west. So just like the dark night, time takes over the day, right? Because when you say wish by and by, it means slowly. When the twilight appears, it means it is swallowing up the sun, it is swallowing up the daylight to introduce darkness. So darkness here will represent death, right? Death too will bring him to the oblivion of the night, because the dark is death. So death, second self, that seals up all in rest. Of course, during the night, when now the sun has set, and then we introduce the night. The night is dark, of course, and we normally sleep during the night, and hence death, second self, because sleep can be associated to partial death, because that's where now we get to be just a bit unconscious and rest. So he says that Now there's no longer sunset because there's twilight, and that twilight, when it moves by and by, it introduces a black night. And also this is a reinforcement of how gloomy the night is, because we all know that without having the descriptive word or adjective black, that automatically during the night is actually darker. But by virtue of William Shakespeare here further cementing the fact that the night is black, ultimately reinforces that imagery of what darkness, which ultimately transits, if not translated, to the idea of passing away, or if not the idea of meeting his demise, if not dying. Then 9 to 12, before that, let us go back and summarize again exactly what we have done, the second quatrain. In essence, what we can conclude to say in the second quatrain, the speaker compares aging to twilight. Growing older is compared to the last light left in the day, slowly fading in the darkness of a night time, which signifies death, like I've already stated. And then now let us go to the third quatrain, which are the third 4 lines of this sonnet. In me thou seest the glowing of such a fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed wherein it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. The poet here implies that his lost youthfulness, energy, and vitality have well consumed him and draw him to death. His tone here is deeply distressful and despondent. He's really saddened by the idea of aging and dying, and you see that through the manner he used words to express, if not to approach, the concept of dying and aging. In me thou seest the glowing of such a fire. So here the word glowing is a contrast of darkness, dying, like what we have been reading in the second quatrain. Now anything that glows has a positive connotation to it, right? You can, whenever someone says you are glowing up, it means that you are beautiful, your appearance is beautiful. But then what does he refer to here when he says that in me thou seest the glowing of such a fire? He is now reminiscing about his youth, that on the ashes of his youth doth die. Before you can have ashes, you are going to have a fire, right? So this is a metaphorical representation of his life, to say, listen, I am aging now, I am dying now, but the ashes that you see now are the result of what was once a glowing fire. You get me? So a glowing fire is a metaphorical representation of his youth, that he was once young, glowing, vital, and vibrant. However, what is left now are what are the ashes, and then the ashes, this is what you call juxtaposition, because we have glowing against what ashes, and then the ashes now are going to be the remnants of what used to be a vibrant fire, which is going to be the aftermath of aging now, which is now at the ashes of what doth lie. So because we no longer have, or the fire is no longer glowing, of course, when the fire is done burning, what's left is what? The ashes. So the ashes will represent his aging, if not his dying. Old age, the dying out of fire, is exactly what I've said. The glowing of such fire, the spark of embers, the ashes of his youth, the remains of the poet's youth, youthful passion. Only the ashes remain when it is burned out. This is exactly what I've just said. These youthful desires remain after the end of his youth. The embers are dying out. The poet's youth once gave him warmth and radiance, which is a contrast of what you have been reading about. That is what we mean by juxtaposition and contrast, where we are shifting from one mood to the other. That it's not all that gloomy. I once had a glow up season in my life when the glowing fire in me when I was young. But now, which is what is fed, so now the fire is doomed. So what is left are what? The ashes. So you understand now what are these symbolical representation of these images. They represent the youthfulness of the poet, as well as now the old version of the poet. And then line 13 and 14, William Shakespeare always uses a couplet to close all of his sonnets, which is an artistic and his signature style of writing, right? And then line 13 to 14, this thou perceived which make thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must live for ever long. This will, however, as felt by the poet, lead the friend to love him more as one who is to pass away soon. There is a change in tone from depression to consolation or to a sense of hope. So the friend will perceive in the poet that the shadow of death, the mark of decay, and it will enhance the intensity of the friend's love for the poet, love more sincerely. The friend will soon be separated from the poet because of death, but the poet finds consolation from the thought of his friend's love. His sense of loss is thus gone, and the mood of depression is how removed. So the couplet is a very strong closing statement. Finally, the couplet reveals that the sonnet is a love poem, as the speaker says that the person being spoken to must acknowledge all these things in order to strengthen the love they have for the speaker before the speaker passes away from aging. And the word love has got so many positive connotations, which is a contrast of what we have been reading about darkness, dark nights, gloominess, somberness, and so forth. In the closing lines now, what he has an element of hope and consolation that even though that I'm aging, but what is important is that all these things, in order to strengthen what the love they have for the speaker just before the speaker can do what, can die. The theme here is a theme of aging. It is something that is natural and inevitable. It does not mean that it's a negative aspect, but refer to the metaphors in each quatrain. So whenever you will answer the concept of a theme in this sonnet, pardon me, please do as I've already said or shared in the previous poems, that you are going to use evidence from the poem to substantiate. There are many prominent topics to discuss in Sonnet 73 analysis. Most prominently, the sonnet touches on the poignant topic of aging and death, which resonates deeply with most people that read the poem. The speaker is coming to terms with the impermanence of his life. He recognized the aging will occur whether he faces it or not, but he works through the process of this idea through the use of metaphors. So he uses quite a lot of metaphors, like we have said, aging, using ashes, using a burning or glowing fire, using autumn, yellow leaves, and so forth to represent the idea of aging and youthfulness. However, the third quatrain is crucial to focus on compared to the two. When the speaker compares death to autumn and the setting sun, it is important to note that this process are cyclical. In a sense, the speaker is still denying the fact that one day he will die. But in the third quatrain, compares death to a dying fire. The speaker finally accepts the finality of death, and then in the last two lines, the finality truly sinks in and causes the speaker to plead that their love will still care for them even though they are gone. In terms of the mood, the sonnet starts out with quite a somber mood, I must say, and then where the speaker now has this dark images of aging and death, and then which also have an element of depression and the sense of disparity. The speaker is coming into terms when with death, and this is not a happy process. But then, just as the theme changes in the couplet, transition in the couplet, the theme changes, hence the use of the word love. Death is no longer the focus, but the focus in the final two sentences or the final sentences, which are the couplet, is that the mood shifts from a somber mood to a brighter mood, that which is cemented on the idea of the embracing of love whilst the speaker is still alive before the speaker departs. It's a very beautiful written piece by William Shakespeare that embraces death and aging. However, towards the end of the poem, he concludes it strongly so with a contrary, or should I say contradicting imagery from those that were used in the three quatrains, where he embraces love to say and seals up the idea and accept that he is going to die. But however, what shall sustain him is the fact that the speaker here is going to continue to do what, to strengthen, or to do what, to love him. Thank you so much, and I believe I managed to make the poem easier for you to understand. Do also check the modern day English that I've shared with you in this poem to simplify the lines that may seem a bit complicated or complex to understand. Once more, good luck.